IMF tranche management. And what are we talking about this year? We're talking about, at this point in time, a key defining moment, the 4-day war. Outcome was positive. We showed maturity and restraint in the eyes of the world. It's been favorable and positive. There's a realignment and re-engagement with the US. Feels like deja vu, 99, 2001 period. We've had 2 visits to the White House. We've had 3 meetings with President Trump. We've had favorable Trump tariffs, more positive, fun vibes. The waivers are more forthcoming. The Field Marshal, Prime Minister have received red carpet treatment in countless capitals. Respect for defense capability. The story around the world is JF-17s versus Rafales. So it's man and machine, not just the machine. And recently, Bloomberg, when questioning Pakistan, how do you balance US and China? Our finance minister said, China has been a long-standing partner, and so has the US. They both know that we are engaged with each other. So don't worry, we will manage this process. Yet challenges remain. Afghanistan opened up a front with us. Trade is closed. Employment, revenue, energy, taxation, exports, informal are concerns. MNCs are swapping assets with local industrialists. FDI is lagging. In this context, 3 quotes came, as I was doing the research. Ejaz, you said, lottery wins are about serendipity, not strategy. You said, far from being in a sweet spot, we might be in a spot of bother. Moeed, you said in a recent article, we still need to shift from a security-centric to a development-centric state, where economy and regional connectivity are central to national security, something that Jack Sullivan and the US are doing now. Moeed said it last year. And Maleeha, in a recent article, you said, external overreach versus internal underreach. I want to ask the panelists, what do they mean? With this context where we have a really positive buzz, they've come up with these comments, and they are national security advisors, they've been leading journalists, ambassadors. So let me first go to Maleeha, you, and then to you with your quotes. I want everybody to share with us, what do you mean by your quotes?
Well, my quote is pretty straightforward. What I argue is that we have, over the decades, engaged extensively with the outside world, which is a good thing, we should. But often we've done this at the expense of our domestic home base. So you can't have the two out of sync. And in recent decades, we've seen, in fact, in recent years, in recent months, we've seen a great deal of engagement again and foreign pursuits. But we haven't seen that matched by the kind of changes we need at home. And one of the things I always say in my foreign policy lectures is all foreign policy begins at home. It's not something dangling outside. And I think one of the arguments that I advance is that this internal underreach, which means lack of reforms, lack of attention to human development, a lack of attention to governance, because one of the thoughts that struck me as I was listening to these distinguished panelists in the previous session, outstanding presentations, was that all of this was subsumed by governance issues. All of it is under the umbrella of governance. If you get governance right, and governance means many things. It also means the judicial part that you were emphasizing. In fact, all of them were emphasizing. So lack of reforms at home, but this over-exuberant desire to engage with the outside world. And then engagement is not outcome. And I always say you can produce a lot of activity, a lot of noise. You can be received, as you said, red carpets. What's the outcome? And what's the outcome for the people of Pakistan? And I would say internal underreach means that lack of reform. Obviously, I refer to the lack of structural economic reform, and I think we've heard enough about it already. But I also mean something that was emphasized in the previous session, which is our failure to invest in our people, which is reflected in the following grim statistics. 40% of our people are illiterate. Of them, more than half are women, girls. 27 million school-going children don't have access to school. We have a poverty level of 40%. And people living in extreme poverty are also in the double digits now. And then we have, obviously, we have deficits in healthcare. We have a human capital crisis in our country. And we have a youth bulge. What future do we expect to give to these young people? We have no jobs, we have no schools, we have no colleges enough to absorb these people. And they don't have the money, frankly, because they live in such difficult, deprived conditions. So internal underreach means that please focus at home as well. We have a prime minister who spends more time abroad than he spends in this country. It's a fact. And we have a prime minister who presides over a cabinet meeting. It's okay. I mean, it's politically all right. I think I can say all these things, right, BBC? Good. I mean, we've got to hold a mirror to ourselves. So I think you have a prime minister who presides over a meeting that is supposed to approve the 27th constitutional amendment, if you please. Not any ordinary piece of law. He does that from Baku. I mean, is Baku more important? Sorry to say that. Or the people of Pakistan who will be affected by an amendment that is grabbing power from the Supreme Court of Pakistan. So I think these are the issues that need to be addressed at home. So it's all very well to go around all over the world, but we have to again ask these two fundamental questions. What are the people of Pakistan getting out of it? Are you aligned with the aspirations of the people of Pakistan by pursuing this kind of foreign policy, if I can even call it foreign policy, frankly? Right. Foreign engagement is not foreign policy, it's just engagements. And the second is, of course, that you're doing it at the expense of enough attention and energy focused at home.
Thank you, Maleeha. You know, Maleeha's passion reminds me of when I was a student and she came to my college in the US, and the moderator was an Indian, and man, did she give him a run for his comments. So I'm going to stay on this side and hope I keep the peace. But you have always said, Moeed, economic security is national security. And when you were the NSA, you came on this panel and you said that, and it was really well received. But you also kept talking about connectivity. Now, we've got 3 borders: Iran, Afghanistan, India. You know, your sort of horizon vision, is it gone? Where are we on that?
Thank you, Saquib, and Assalamu alaikum everyone, and thanks for having me. So, for starters, the great news is it's not my vision. The National Security Policy of Pakistan is the state's document, and it very clearly says 3 things. Number one, I think what Maleeha was just saying. What is security? It is ultimately the safety, security, prosperity, and dignity of your most disempowered citizen. That's it. And everything else is how to get there. The how to get there part, when we were doing the national security policy, we asked pretty much everybody we could have, including many sitting here, give us a model of sustained economic well-being in which Pakistan is not integrated in the region. Not one could come up with it. This is not me, right? So there isn't a model. And the region is where it is not because of Pakistan. I mean, India is going in a direction that, you know, they will find out very soon what that means. Afghanistan, we can see Iran is globally isolated, and we're left with China. And the more we do with China, some capitals of the world obviously don't like it. So it's a very difficult position to be in, but you can't throw the baby out of the bathwater, right? If there isn't another alternative, then that is what you've got to focus on. So the question is, in small pieces, where can you separate the economics from the hard security? That's fundamentally the question. Otherwise, the world won't wait for us, right? If the Torkham border is closed 250 days out of 365, the Central Asians are going to find something else. They already have. You know, they call it the Middle Corridor. But let me problematize this a little bit more for everybody, and I'll just take a minute. I completely agree with what's been said before, except that the reason we don't have domestic reform is precisely because how Pakistan is engaged with the world. Pakistan actually, almost throughout our history, we've been pretty good at playing the global chessboard. I mean, we were the only country that was a strategic partner to the US and China throughout the Cold War, etc. The problem is that the way we developed I would call our entire development model, was essentially that we went to the world and said, we can be part of your geostrategic interests. We are willing to fight for you. If there are conflicts around us, we will team up with you, and the we could change, or the they could change, US or whatever. We will do this for you in return for handsome economic assistance. The they responded by saying, yes, you're very important, Cold War, then post 9/11. We will give you that assistance, but we are not giving you that assistance so that you can develop your country. We are giving you this assistance because you got to produce something either in Afghanistan or whatever. Because they were primarily not interested in how that money was spent, the money was actually captured by the elite and the state and redistributed for their own benefit. So the problem is not that reform isn't happening, we don't know that we need reform. Everybody says this, every conversation today will say this. The problem is that the way our development model was set up, the financing was all external, largely debt, and the financing then was used for whatever we wanted, but the KPIs given to us were whether you are winning in Afghanistan or not. And that opaque elite structure continues to this day. You can label it differently, you can name it differently, and dare I say, I'm sorry, I'm not being a bad guest. We are all part of that. We've benefited from that structure, and that redistributive conversation has always been skewed towards the elite.
But Moeed, you can't leave because you've given me a question that I need to ask you in the second round. So whoever your next person is, tell them 10 minutes later. Ejaz, I love this comment of yours. I mean, it's stuck with me. I mean, I love the way he said it. Far from being in a sweet spot, we might be in a spot of bother. What do you mean? Please don't scare us, but what do you mean?
Thanks, Saquib, and thank you to Pakistan Business Council for inviting me here. It's very simple. I mean, the three courts that you have identified all have the same motif, frankly. One can debate whether a particular state needs to develop internally and then face the external world, or in the case of many states which have governance problems, economic problems, problems of human security, and yet they try to punch above their weight. We have been one of those states. And that is because internal reforms are extremely difficult. I mean, the previous session was really amazing, but as someone who tries to look at systems and structures, I'm always a little amused and also obviously disconcerted by the fact that all of us know how we should reform. But the idea is why, even though we know that we need to reform, and even though we also know how to go about it, why is it that we haven't been able to do it? And that is where systems and structures come in. I'm not a golfer. Moeed is. Moeed is a fantastic golfer. It's like saying, listen, you have to do two things. You have to improve your backswing and your follow through. But the idea is, how does one improve the backswing and the follow through? And that is where structures come in. And that is where governance also comes in. But specifically to this court, listen, policy is not, as I said, serendipity. It's a process. A state has certain determinants. It has certain priorities. those priorities are then worked on. And then you are assuming a system in and through which you're working on particular policies. The national security policy talked about a citizen-centric approach. It talked about cooperative geoeconomics. It talked about, not just the hard security and geopolitics, but the issue is, have we actually owned that policy? I mean, do we have, continuity of policy? And the answer, unfortunately, is no.
Well, I mean, your analogy on the Gulf Stream, I think, Atif, you, myself, and Samar, we should not be the national security advisors. Our backswing and follow through, there's no chemistry. But Azam Farooq, I think you are the designated NSA from the business community. Beautiful swing, if you need to see it. Let me go to the second one. Moeed, let me start with just Moeed because he has. Look, elite capture. This is a buzzword that's come in from the IFIs, but it scares this room. We're the wealth creators. Nobody calls us the wealth creators. They call us the elite who have captured. I take a huge exception, along with a lot of people, when the word elite capture is given by the fund or IFIs, the lens is on this room. Can you try to navigate us through this? You've written extensively on this, I know. So Moeed, first you, then Maleeha. Can you leave us with some feel good that it's not us?
I want to be invited back, so let me try. Again, I'll tell you something. I'll sort of go back to my time in government, and I'll tell you one constant argument I used to have with the bureaucracy. Jamil sir was there in a different role, but not with him, thankfully. I had a very odd perch looking at virtually everything because of this national security policy. So a lot of colleagues here saw me when I was in government for one thing or another. And when I used to ask our colleagues in the bureaucracy, X person has this problem, why are we not resolving it? The answer was, sir, ये सारे आपने गाड़ी देखी है, किस गाड़ी में आए? तो I used to ask them कि गाड़ी आपने लेके दी है? कि नहीं सर इतने अमीर हैं और फिर आ गए कि हमें ये concession दे दें. When you, in a capitalist system, when you declare wealth generators as quote unquote बहुत अमीर और इसलिए, with all due respect, I've heard this, चोर, we have a problem. Because the edifice of the economy is going to function through wealth creation. So this is a problem. हमारा बहुत से जो thought process है, those who are tasked to bring in foreign investment spend more time telling us why that investment is not good for Pakistan rather than bringing it in. So that problem is there. But let me sort of flip this as well. And with due apologies, I'm one of we're all in the same sort of camp. Very seldom did I see any seasoned private sector person walk into my office and ask for anything beyond what they needed for their particular enterprise. So there's a combination. The public sector and the private sector don't know how to speak. One sees you as the problem because you drive a big car. You are only interested in yourself and not the larger space of this room. The combination is a disaster for Pakistan, right? One other thing. Where I talk about the elite capture is not that part, but there's another part we have to think about. This is the powerful elite. Some of us are part of it sometimes and not at other times, but there's also a consistently powerful elite who actually lives beyond the law. So people who have to make decisions for the country, it could be you today and me tomorrow. We don't stand in lines. We don't send our kids to public schools. Hospitals are our own. You don't have to stop at a traffic light. For you, Pakistan is paradise. Unless you can get you and me to live the same life, we will never reform. That's fundamentally the problem.
And I want to just say, it's a really important point, and Razak Saab, that's the reason PBC came into being. Because the businessman does go and talk about him or herself or their industry. And I think JK, Zilaf, it's really important. The PBC's institutionalization should take care of this kind of commentary. Really important message for us. Okay? So individuals can go individually, but PBC should not be going in for a particular industry. It's really important. And that's why we'll become more. Over to you.
Saquib, can I say one line? Sorry, Maleeha, if you don't mind. Just one line because I'm going to leave. आप लोग एक चीज seriously, this is a serious comment. Please set up a window where the public sector people can speak to you, because what I found was you speak different languages. They don't understand.
Maleeha,
Well,
you wrote very recently on
Yes,
this.
I did. I mean, elite capture has been with us for as long as I can remember. But I think we should acknowledge that elites run countries everywhere. Countries are not run by the public. The public elects people and elites run countries. And I have been focused really on the power elite in our country. There are power elite.
Power elite. yeah.
Power elite. So there are overlapping elites in our country. And then there is a power elite. And if we look at the power elite, we will come to the conclusion that a few hundred families have dominated our legislature for the last 7 decades. Either their aunts, uncles, progeny, and dynasties are a reflection of elite capture. Because remember, one of the things that elite capture, let me go to the original point, otherwise I lose track. So if elites run countries everywhere, why has our elite been so resistant, let's say, to change and reform, innovation? Because it depends on the nature of elites running a country. Because they differ. There are elites that are more conscious of public welfare. They have a sense of enlightened self-interest. There are elites that are only interested in self-enrichment, not wealth creation, as you put it. They're not interested in promoting policies that will promote wealth creation. They're only interested in self-enrichment. So I think when we look at the Pakistani case, a few hundred families dominating our legislature, and as I said, their progeny then carrying on. Now, what does this kind of elite capture do to a country? What it does, it blocks mobility, the most important thing that keeps a society dynamic. It also retards economic growth, because this is a reform-resistant elite. And it also has no concern with the kinds of issues that we were talking about earlier, issues of human development, human capital. No interest in developing that. In fact, they have no interest in human welfare. So this power elite is really there for itself. And it is interested in self-perpetuation, and it's interested, as I said, in self-enrichment. I think one of the conclusions that, I believe it is the World Bank report, if I'm not wrong, which did something on elite capture not so long ago, 2-3 years ago. One of its findings was that as a result of exemptions and privileges given to this elite, Pakistan loses up to 5 to 6% of GDP. Now that's phenomenal. So again, you can see this elite is there and works and operates at the expense of the public, of the people of Pakistan. So I mean, you look at this room, and I was listening to the people just before us. I mean, we have no shortage of expertise, none whatsoever. There is no skill that is lacking in our country, none. But where do we take all of this? Who leverages all of this? Nobody. Because governments are not interested in this. I mean, one of the key issues that governments, I'm speaking at a seminar later, a couple of days' time. Population growth. Nobody's interested in it. Governments pay lip service and do nothing. Even education, and I'll end on that note. Education. I mean, the Prime Minister of Pakistan has announced an education emergency twice in the last 1 year. I mean, if there's an emergency, then you've got to do something. You've got to take action. You just announce it because some foreign country is funding a seminar, and you come there, declare it, go home, do nothing. And I think one of the points that was left over from the last point that I was making about internal underreach and external overreach was one of the pernicious habits that this has encouraged, this over sort of emphasis on the external, is a mindset of external dependency. So you depend on the outsider for just about everything. For security, for the economy, you borrow abroad, you depend on external financial resources, and you depend on bailouts. So unless we shed this habit of just looking outside all the time, and this is not an argument for not engaging with the world. Of course, we must engage with the world. But we mustn't do it at the expense of our own, what our issues are, and we mustn't do it and keep developing or reinforcing this habit of external dependence.
So Ejaz, the two articles that people haven't read, one article I think got you into trouble, but I'm going to say it, the three fronts, you must read his three fronts article. The other one is essentially trading with hostile neighbors. I think India was in your mind at that time, now it's Afghanistan. But I'm not going to go there. Those are the two articles you should read that he's. I'm going to go on the big elephant in the room, which is China-US relation with Pakistan. So, Ejaz, I know you wanted to say a few words about it. Let's hear you out and then open up to the audience. So, 5 minutes, over to you. You have lots to say on that, but I'd like Ejaz, you to have a go at it.
Thanks, Saquib. Just a word about this elite capture. It's not in my wheelhouse, but a couple of thoughts. Ashimoglu and Robinson talked about this, and I'm not particularly keen on that book, although the next book was a much better one because there was lesser certainty about their solutions. I'm always extremely wary of any works in social sciences that have a high degree of certainty, because human affairs are very complex. So the idea of wealth generation has to be kind of juxtaposed with wealth distribution also. And that, the sense of inequality is increasing across the world. We've had this problem obviously for a very long time, but if there is any consolation, if you will, it's also now a big problem in developed countries. Especially the United States. I think the Nordic countries are the best placed. But so whether the elites are extractive, or whether they are inclusive, I think that's an important point. With reference to China, you see, China and the US are, in geopolitical and geoeconomic terms, they are the large umbrella under which other things are unfolding. Whether it's with reference to small powers, middle powers, whether in terms of alliances. And it's interesting that, this has now become the conversation. But back in 2011, there were two very interesting books, two very different approaches. One by the late Henry Kissinger, which was on China, it was called On China, where Kissinger was saying, listen, the rise of China is an inevitable historical process. And therefore, the United States does not really need to go into a confrontation. We need to find some kind of modus vivendi. And the other book took a completely different approach by Aaron Friedberg, which talked about the Kissinger approach, what he called the Shanghai School. And he said, listen, we have to contain this. So this particular approach came to be known as the Crow School, from Eyre Crow, who was that British diplomat who wrote this famous memorandum in 1907 about the rise of Germany and how Britain had to, basically confront Germany. So this idea of the Shanghai School and the Crow School has kind of moved along. And then you have this famous work with, this Harvard project by Graham Allison, which became famously known as the Thucydides trap. With this, Trump 2.0, we have seen an interesting kind of twist. I mean, and I'm not saying it's policy, because frankly, my own reading of Mr. Trump is that one can't really structure one's world around him. It's very difficult. But nonetheless, I was really, struck by the use of the term G2 by this administration, because this is a term that Kissinger used in his book. And so the conversation that's happening in Japan and South Korea, in Australia, the conversation that's happening here in our part of the world, in Europe, in terms of both the European Union and the European NATO members, what exactly is the United States doing? Is it still a primacist? Is it now a prioritizer? or is it going to be an isolationist? No one is clear about that. And, you see Mr. Trump doing certain things, then backing off, then doing certain other things, and so on and so forth. So this is the kind of world in which, and frankly, there's great uncertainty in this world, and there are lots of questions. Countries are now talking about having nuclear capabilities. I mean, South Korea is having that conversation, Japan is having that conversation, horror of horrors, Germany is having that conversation. So we are definitely entering a world that's kind of very similar in some ways to the pre-World War I kind of alliance structures, and also the pre-World War II uncertainties. So I think whatever policy that we want to have.
A friend of mine the other day emailed me and he said, I asked him, how do you see the world? And he goes, well, it seems more like 1820s than 2020s. We have empires and emperors. So that's food for thought as Pakistan tries to navigate its business positioning and that economic opportunity. So I'm going to open it up to people asking Maleeha or Ejaz as they create a vision for their businesses, whether it helps and what else would help. I think we can probably hear you. Yeah.
What they invest elsewhere is modest, shall we say. However, China remains the biggest and the largest investor in Pakistan today. That's a fact. But I think the reason we've not been able to attract Chinese investment is because China is not going to get its government now to tell companies where to invest. Their companies are autonomous. They are out there to make profit. This is a private sector model that they have. So therefore, to expect the government to tell their companies, and when they did tell their companies, we were unable to fulfill our commitments because the deals that were negotiated were somewhat flawed, let's put it that way. Whose fault it was, let's leave that alone. So I think the reasons investment has been deterred in Pakistan, and this Chinese investment is the same as investment that hasn't come in, FDI has not come in from abroad. It's the same reason, governance issues, a lack of judicial enforcement, lack of policy continuity, instability. And as far as China is concerned, I can share with you that today, of course, it remains Pakistan's strategic priority, regardless of the lunches at the White House, because the lunches haven't brought anything yet. And I think we have to also recognize, and I think Ejaz will probably agree, that a personalized relationship between the leaders of two countries doesn't really create the foundation for a durable, sustainable relationship. It's personalized. And it's personalized with a man who's so whimsical. Tomorrow he gets annoyed with us because we decide not to send troops, for example, to Gaza. That's something, by the way, I'm opposed to. And I think that's a great example of external overreach and internal underreach. We have active insurgencies in 2 of our provinces. We have a problem on both our borders today, India and Afghanistan. And we want to send troops to Gaza? I mean, it defies reason, it defies logic, especially because the situation there is so sort of uncertain, as well as the fact that Israel has never abided by any agreement that it's forged with anybody. So if anybody thinks that this so-called 20-point plan is going to sort of work, how is it going to work? I mean, I'd like to know. But in any case, but China, I mean, I just want to end on this note. China has 3 concerns with Pakistan today. And this is, I get it from fairly senior levels, and I think they talk about it quite publicly now, which is, again, a departure from the past. 1, the security of Chinese personnel working in Pakistan. Yeah. Clear. Clear. Number 2, I'll just finish with this. Number 2, they constantly keep telling me, figure out how you want your country to be governed, for God's sake. Decide your path and then stick to it. So instability in Pakistan may not be in the minds of those who rule us today, but it's certainly in the minds of people who want to come and invest but can't. And thirdly, and I think this is not, again, it's not no secret, they have really been very perturbed by the public manner in which we have asked for loan rollovers and for debt restructuring of the IPPs. They have, they've got agreements, they are creditors to so many other countries. You go public and say, could you please do this for us? Could you do this for us? They have a problem with that. They also say, ask us privately, and we will do whatever we can. But the moment you go public, first of all, you show how fragile you are.
Yeah.
You have to talk up confidence, not talk down. And secondly, you put us in a very embarrassing position.
Very well. I'm sorry, I'm not going to take any more questions, hopefully, Maleeha. Ejaz, you have the final word. I know you want to say, and then we'll close. Ejaz?
No, yeah, so the lunches haven't brought anything, but I'm quite certain that they have imposed costs because no lunches are free. On education, is there anyone in this hall, and that includes me, whose children went to government schools or who goes to, when they are ill, to government hospitals? I think the answer to both questions is in the negative. And I think that is where the problem lies. Because once the elite moves away and creates its own cocoon, its own bubble, the rest just falls by the wayside. And health and education, we keep talking about this innovation and entrepreneurship and all of this. We've often had these discussions. Dr. Ali Shima was talking about this. Dr. Ishrat Hussain is sitting here. We have these discussions. Local governments, and regardless of the system. I mean, if you read Jen's China playbook, she talks about the local governments and all the innovation that takes place from there. It's a ground up kind of situation. We still haven't been able to decide that. And without human resource, healthy human resource, and educated human resource, frankly, everything else that we are talking about is just in a vacuum.
Ejaz, thank you very much. And thank you very much to everybody. I'd like to thank Moeed in his absence. Please pass on our thanks. And Ejaz and Maleeha, really nice to see you again. I think the most important thing that we can request the panelists here is keep writing. They write. And we should read. Thank you very much.